Welcome to today's podcast. This time we travel around the world and look down under, as we say in Europe, to see how it is in Australia. And I'm glad to having you here. Welcome, Thomas Hall.
Thanks for having me, Jürgen. Pleased to be here.
Thank you for your time. And it's getting already late and at your side of the world. Funny is the last time we met in Heidelberg.
Yeah.
And it's not so long ago as you had been an active member in my original meetings for project management. That's the connector between us, as you had been working for the EMBL in a nice area in Heidelberg and still posting the development about their new buildings and had been part of our project management community here. Could you a little bit describe what you have done at the EMBL, what the EMBL is, and how it came that you're working on such a place?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I guess to give the background to that, my wife is a research scientist and was the reason that we ended up moving to Germany. And I made a career change from planning to project management, which I found as a much more rewarding career, much more broad. And I was very lucky to start working at EMBL in 2014 and worked in a great department for the facility management team and was involved in a number of lab refurbishments, culminating in the new build for the EMBL imaging center, which was opened earlier this year.
What is EMBL? That is an abbreviation, but how it's long and what do they do? Because I think a lot of the listeners will not know what it is.
So EMBL is the European Molecular Biological Laboratory. It's an intergovernmental research institute that's funded by member states like Germany, France, the UK, predominantly European countries, but there's also a number of associate members and members from outside of Europe now as it becomes a more broadly recognized institute for basic life science research. Australia is an associate member, fortunately, which is great for me because we really felt like we were also part of EMBL. In fact, there's an EMBL Australia that has started up using the same methodology and structure that EMBL has, which is essentially to promote basic research that's very well funded, slightly different to the traditional funding model for science and research around the world. So give the early scientists a great platform where they're well funded and they can concentrate on their research rather than always concentrating about where's the next dollar coming from. And that seems to have been a very successful approach to research.
And when you decided to go back to Australia with your wife?
It depends. When my wife always wanted to go back to Australia. The longer I stayed there, the more I wanted to continue living in Europe. Ultimately, we started having a family, and being so far away from the grandparents was a very strong contribution to our decision ultimately to go back to Australia. We still have very strong ties to Heidelberg and to EMBL, which I'm very glad to have. Constantly getting videos and texts from friends about, particularly when while the EMBL imaging center was being completed, because I left before it was finalized. Getting images when the construction was finished, getting images when it was being put into operation, getting images when it was being the official opening ceremony. This was really sort of exciting to see, and I think without those lifelong friendships that I made there, this wouldn't have been so much.
It was a little bit a baby from you, no? So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I had 2 babies before my second child.
Yes, I was surprised because I got your message. Okay, my child is here, and when you said, "Oh, I'm now departing and leaving Germany," and I said, "Oh, but it's a challenging time because it was already with COVID pandemic. When to move everything from life to our country, who was nearly in a lockdown, was, I would say, wow, impressive."
This was very challenging. It was very stressful. This is something that I also appreciate, having gone through moving from Germany to Australia during a global pandemic, was the support that EMBL gave us as well. EMBL is sometimes, from people who work there, they don't like some of the potentially unstructured way things are, but at the same time, we were incredibly well supported. You know, if there was the risk that we weren't going to be able to go back to Australia, we had support we had somewhere where we could live that EMBL was through the EMBL support staff that has their own departments for scientists that arrive there. Those who have lived in Germany or lived in Heidelberg, it can be incredibly difficult sometimes to find a rental apartment in a very quick time. And so having that short-term rental from EMBL gives people peace of mind. And that also means when you're leaving as well, that when you're wrapping your life up, you have some little bit of flexibility. And without that, things would have been significantly more stressful than what they were, which was really nice. And then, so it was hard to leave, but at the same time, we were incredibly well supported if in case anything did go wrong, which thankfully it didn't.
Which is really a great support, makes my life easier. Before you started in Germany, you told me you already did a little bit thinking about sports career. You did Javelin, which I wasn't aware of. And I said, wow, it's a different way to decide between sport and a scientific career, or when to move to another country.
Yeah, look, I made the decision to move overseas because I love traveling. I've been very fortunate to grow up traveling around the world with my parents, and I took that opportunity to move with my now wife with two hands very strongly. And I knew the risk that while I was still trying to be a professional athlete, that moving overseas, moving away from that support network that I already had, may have a negative result or effect on my sporting career, and that's fine. I made that decision, and in the end, I had to decide on career or sport, and sport doesn't pay nearly as well as career. Typically, there's a few people who do get paid very well, but look, I did sport from passion and was very much deeply involved in that. But also, at some point, the body starts to tell you got to slow down, and doing sport at a very high level is very, very demanding on your body as well. So I tried to reach the Olympics. I wasn't so successful. Lots of good memories and good friends, and a lot learned that I've brought into my career through hard work and training and devotion and mindset, dealing with stressful and difficult situations. Failure is probably the key one, because you train an awful lot for those big events. And if I calculated the number of minutes or the number of seconds over 1 year that I was actually in a competition competing to achieve what I put everything into, compared to how many hours, days, weeks, months go into those seconds, it's a very, very, very vast gap in terms of time. So failure is something you have to deal with on a fairly regular basis.
Yeah, I know from some Olympic winners, we say that was an invest of over 8 to 10 years before be on that level for the finals in the Olympic to win the gold medal. It's a long road. I know from my active career how long it lasts, injuries in your body and the payback coming in the elder age. That's a fair deal. You not only changed back to Australia, you changed as well the company. And now you're working as a project director for a German company in Australia.
Yeah, it's funny how, if I think about all of the decisions that I've made since 2013 when I moved to Germany, an opportunity has come along, and I've taken that opportunity, and it's led to a great outcome. And my experience from working at EMBL construction and scientific area led me to Waldner. Waldner is a large German company that specialises in laboratory infrastructure and joinery. And ironically, my first introduction to Waldner was as a prospective customer. So I got to know Waldner, thankfully, before I moved back to Australia, because getting to know and starting at a new company during a pandemic is, I'm sure some people out there have gone through that, not a particularly easy process. But having been there and visited and met some people already, it was a much smoother transition. And my boss Max, based in Singapore, really was great bringing me on board. He saw a lot of, I guess, the synergies in my background and skills that made sense for moving into the Australian market, which they had already been actively trying to do. And so that worked really, really well for me, because I got to continue working for a German company. I get to continue speaking German for work, which was a very important point for me. Very difficult to achieve in Australia, typically, because I'd spent so long learning and investing time to learn German to a business level. I didn't want to just throw that away. It was important to me. And also working in a regional role where I still have some travel for work, but it's not constant travel. There's no travel at the moment because of COVID, unfortunately, but that was also the sort of tick the three boxes for what I was looking for, and staying in a lab-based scientific research research construction role, which really excites me.
So it brings all together what you have done before. Isn't it crazy as well? The traveling, meeting people, learning new people and cultures.
It's funny. I wrote a number of personal goals before I moved. I wrote a 5-year strategic plan, personal strategic plan, before I moved over to Germany. And within the 5 years, I had achieved 80% of those goals, which I think is pretty good considering life is very unpredictable. I did a similar sort of activity for moving back to Australia when my wife and I made that decision, which was before I knew Waldner, before we knew about COVID, before at least 2 years before we moved back. And it's a similar sort of thing somehow falls into place with setting yourself goals and having strategic sort of intents, even if they're personal, not work related. Even having those on paper starts to bring you in your conscious slowly towards your goal. I think having it happen more than once now is a little bit hard to think as a coincidence. So I am definitely a believer in writing down goals on a fairly frequent basis, even if they don't get achieved. Right, it's then something to go back and review. That's very, very beneficial. And for me, that's been a really big key for the last 8-9 years now.
If you're now looking forward to the next coming months, is there something besides Christmas and the New Year Eve that you say, cool, I can't wait to look for it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first and foremost is taking a little bit of time off and spending it just with the family. In Australia, there's a very, also in Germany, very similar time period over Christmas where in the construction field, nothing happens, which is a period that I'll take particularly seriously this year and not look at any emails or messages from my colleagues and really just take a mental break from work. So that's, for me at the moment, the most important thing is to spend that time with the family and not worry about any work-related items. The second thing I'm really planning on is getting the next big project to cement my I guess justify myself to my senior managers as well back in Germany that Tom's the right guy to have in Australia. And three, get back in the gym.
Yeah, and I think you have nice weather to get outside as well. Compared to temperatures is now on a better plate as on our side where we currently had strong winds and snow and cold temperatures.
I do love the snow. It sounds strange for someone from Australia, but I love the snow. I was very excited to live so close to the Alps in Heidelberg, and was often 4 times a year during summer to go Klettersteigen and go mountaineering. In fact, during the pandemic, I climbed Mont Blanc with the EMBL Alpine Club, which was one of those ticks on that strategic that personal strategic plan was to climb Mont Blanc, and just love being outdoors and Europe. So it's a shame we don't have any big mountains in Australia.
So now you can go back to Bondi Beach.
Yeah.
And swim with the sharks. Yeah. I think that's a challenge in Australia sometimes.
Yeah. If you're not getting eaten alive by mosquitoes, there's things in the water that want to sting you or bite you.
Thomas, I thank you so much that we are still kept our connection. And I'm really curious what's happening the next years with you in Australia, how many additional kids you will raise up, as you have already too. Let's see. I don't ask how much are on your checklist on that part. I really wish you all the best for your activities for 22. And I say thank you so much for your time. Stay healthy and see you hopefully soon.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.